Good morning. What is neuroplasticity? It's really about stretching that brain, and how do we do that? Is it through exercise? Certainly not able to do stand-ups with our brains. Well, maybe we can stand upside down. I'm Mary Winters. I'm the owner of About Senior Solutions, a gerontologist, and you're watching Visionary Aging. We put this program together for you so that you will have resources and the support to live your best life ever and to age in the way you want, and have as many resources as possible. We're going to go ahead and go out of order a little bit today. So we're going to start with Melinda, and then we'll go on to our caregiver question a little bit later. Morning. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Great. Yeah, so we talk about exercising our bodies all the time, but we thought it would be a great idea to talk about neuroplasticity and what that means and how we actually exercise and stretch our brains too. So,
Yes,
what
the
you
brain.
think about that?
The brain's gym. Yeah, it's fascinating to kind of like look into neuroplasticity and what that means, and it just means that our brains are capable of forming new neural pathways,
Mhm.
um, and we're capable. It when we think about how our brain is capable of changing or making the forming those new neural pathways, like that's how we change. Otherwise, we're kind of in the same loop of thinking, or we engage in the same habits because of those same beliefs and the same ways of thinking. So one of the most powerful ways to affect change, which is certainly a huge topic in January, everybody has New Year's resolutions. They're
Right.
all we're kind of looking back at last year and seeing like, oh, what do I want to do differently for this year? And one of the best ways to kind of go about changing our habits and what we're actually doing in our lives and the results that we get from what we're doing in our lives is by changing the way that we think and creating those new neural pathways. And a lot of times, if we don't really focus, if you focus on changing your neural pathways and the brain's neuroplasticity, it can make making those behavioral changes a lot easier, and that those things will come a lot more naturally. So there's a couple, there's a lot of different ways to affect our neuroplasticity and help form those new neural pathways.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, I mean,
One.
and that's why we
Yeah.
actually, oh, you go ahead. I will talk.
No,
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 no, no.
go
I
ahead.
mean, but that's why older adults actually have more neuroplasticity because we've lived longer and we've lived so many different types of situations too. So the brain automatically starts to grow and develop those additional neurons or those different pathways, sometimes even on a completely different hemisphere of the brain, the opposite hemisphere of the brain. We only have two. But yeah, it's very interesting. So
Yeah.
you share as far as from the perspective of changing habits and
Yeah, from
exercise.
habits. So if there's something that you don't enjoy. So, say most people don't particularly enjoy exercise.
Hmm.
One of the ways that you can create that change in your life, if you want to include more exercise or more activity, but you don't necessarily enjoy it, is to couple it with something that you do enjoy. So, if you're wanting to incorporate more walking, but you don't really enjoy walking on a treadmill, but you like the outdoors, then you would want to be doing more of the walking outdoors. If you enjoy a certain music, you don't really like walking even outdoors, but you enjoy a certain music, then maybe bringing that music with you and listening to that music. It creates a positive coupling with the behavior that you want to continue or that you want to include more in your life. And your brain will form that new neural pathway because of the positive experience of the music that you like, and it'll become easier and easier to go for more walks because you'll be looking forward to that music, and it creates that change. Um, Yeah, that's one of the most powerful things is just coupling it with something positive. Even if you're, say, going into like, if you're coming into the strength shop and you're doing your workout, we don't work out with music because that changes the tempo, and we want everybody to be lifting the weights very slowly instead of lifting the weights to music. But you can couple that with positive thoughts. So you can, before and after your workout, kind of give yourself a little pep talk, or remember or remind yourself why you're doing you're doing the workout, why it's important to you, what the benefits are that you're experiencing from it. And that kind of positivity creates a different relationship in the brain to the activity that you don't necessarily enjoy so much, which I think is fascinating.
It is fascinating. The brain is so fascinating. We only use what, 10% or so of it.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
brightest minds. Um, and it's also really important as far as brain health and protecting your brain and supporting plasticity. It's all the basics too, that healthy life balance, just like what we talk about in Shape Up. Having that spiritual community to lift that angst that you have, that higher power that you can just kind of release whatever anxiety you have and say, take it away. That healthy life balance of getting enough sleep, having laughter, making sure that you're following up on your medical appointments and you're staying well, and keeping track of your health and your teeth and your feet and all of those good things. And what is your attitude and who's influencing you in regards to your attitude? Are you able to stay positive? We have situations where we are going to grieve over loss, but what kind of support do you have? Um, and still actually needing to go through some of those processes. And then what are we putting in our body? Sometimes what we put in doesn't always come out. It stays in there and it's gunking us up. What kind of physical activity do we have? What kind of united family? What kind of connections do you have? They don't have to be blood relatives. Who are your family of choice? And then what is your purpose? What kind of purpose do you have for yourself? I have a gentleman who extremely bright, and his purpose was research. And we want to make sure that he's able to communicate those items that he worked on because it gives him pleasure. It was something that he was so good at and something that he put so much time into. And fascinating individual that we want to make sure, regardless of where he is in a stage of memory loss, that he feels like he has some purpose and he feels like perhaps he has a student that he can engage with, who may just be, I don't say just, but is a caregiver. But in his mind, that might be somebody that he can really continue to tutor or to support in information that he feels is really important. And it also keeps his communication skills up. So even
Yeah.
if we have brain injury or we have issues related to our bodies changing, if we're if we're it's kind of the use it or lose it idea too, right? So the more
Absolutely.
we're using it in different areas, which is also why we want to make sure that you get this perk. The perk is free, and today is actually National Hot Tea Day. And the perk pun of the day is my first visit to the trendy local cafe filled me with, I can't even read it, with uncertainty. Uncertainty. But we
Oh,
send this
that's
out for free, and
yeah.
it's so fun. People use it with their grandchildren, with their residents in their assisted living, their boarded care communities. It's just a great way to sit down and use that plasticity in your brain to communicate, talk about things that are new, things that you may know, but you can expand on in communication. And then many people are still able to do the word search on the back, and there's something new every single day. Like tomorrow is going to be National Rubber Ducky Day. I mean, how great is that? We should
Yeah.
all be able to celebrate National Rubber Ducky Day. But these are the things that help to support brain plasticity. Just like if you do a crossword puzzle, and you
Hmm.
always do it out of the LA Times, try a different crossword puzzle because you start to kind of form how that particular word search or that particular crossword puzzle is done. There's a pattern to how that creator creates that. Try a different creator of a different word search.
Uh, that's
Um,
how you want to form new habits. Is that habit when you're doing that New York Times crossword puzzle every week and that becomes your habit and you know that really well, and that's kind of like what your brain is used to. The
exactly.
same thing happens if you want to include exercise or you want to clean up your diet, like, or there's something else that you want to habitually do. Maybe you want to sit down and write every day in a journal. The more that you do it, the more consistent you are with that, the more it becomes a part of just like your routine. That's
Mhm.
something that is, that's where those new neural pathways are formed.
Exactly. Exactly. So, yeah, it's really about changing it up.
Mhm.
Learn a language, or why don't you go into a thesaurus and look up a word and see what other different words you could come up with. Look at a foreign language and compare the words to English. Or look at 3 or 4 different languages and look at what it says and how it looks in German and Russian and Chinese, and have those discussions. It's really just about using different parts of your brain and different things that you hadn't learned before. But there are also different types of neuroplasticity, like structural neuroplasticity, functional neuroplasticity, and we don't have enough time to go into some of those things. Fascinating, fascinating work, and things that we can
Yeah.
really do to support our brain health.
I think the thing that is so exciting about it is that you really get to choose. Like you're really in charge of how you want your life to look when you think of what your brain can learn. So if there are things in your life that you want to include or changes you want to make, you can train your brain to make those changes by just doing them consistently, pairing them with positive things, exposing yourself to new things that may help make those changes. And then of course the more you do something, the more it becomes like just a routine, and just that those pathways have been formed. But you get to choose, especially if you're aware that you get to choose, and you're aware that your brain is something that can change, and
Mhm.
that you have control over if you pay attention to how the brain learns and how the brain changes and how the brain grows.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And truly, I mean, we do know that people who have traumatic brain injury, sometimes they don't recover from that, but oftentimes we understand that they shouldn't be able to do certain things. And I believe that what happens is through neuroplasticity, the brain compensates in another area to adjust to certain things. So sometimes when we have these miraculous kind of recoveries, it is due to neuroplasticity and the brain really being able to restructure that process in another area
Mhm.
as it builds those neurons. So it's
That's
fascinating, fascinating work. It's fascinating to learn about and to be part of, and something that we didn't think existed up until maybe 20-ish years ago, maybe a little bit longer as far as the people who were really involved in the research. But it really started becoming a word about 20 years ago. So still a very young area.
Yeah, and I am sure we're gonna discover much, much more as we
Exactly. Well, I know you need to get going, but you have a fantastic weekend, and thank you so much for those brain stretches.
Yes, brain stretching, brain. Thank you all, and, I'll see you guys next week. Looking
Sounds
forward.
sounds great. All right, have a good one. And on next, we're going to go ahead and um, Steve was not able to come on today, but we still have a caregiver question. So let me go ahead and present our caregiver question. So our listener, mentioned that her mother takes a medication for anxiety as needed, so she doesn't take it every day. And there's one caregiver who never gives her the medication, and there's another caregiver who often gives her the medication, but not always. And she asks if that is a problem. And so let me talk a little bit about PRN, or as needed medications. They are really only to be used as needed. If somebody has a specific issue or a need for that medication, then you can reach out to that. And it should be a medication the doctor would have prescribed that does not need a routine to be able to take it to support the individual, kind of like Tylenol can be a PRN too. So you would only use Tylenol when you really feel like you need Tylenol. You have a headache, you have pain in your shoulder. So that may be the only time that you take that as needed. Sometimes individuals may take medication every single day like it is a routine. And so that's something that you potentially would talk to your mom's doctor about. Maybe that she needs that every day. Maybe she is prescribed that medication because she gets anxious at a certain time of the day. Maybe she has she sundowns. I don't know more about the specifics of your situation, but there may be a different way to communicate with your mom, and therefore she doesn't need the medication at all. It sounds like one caregiver is pretty successful in maneuvering or working with her anxiety, or maybe she doesn't know to use the medication. And then the other caregiver, maybe she uses that because she feels like it helps her through her shift with your mom, or maybe it's because she feels responsible to give her that medication, or perhaps you're even indicating that she needs that. So I don't know exactly what kinds of behavior your mom might be exhibiting when somebody goes to that medication, but definitely something to sit down and review with the care agency. Definitely care management could be very beneficial, because we could really get to the bottom of what's happening. What is the antecedent? What is happening prior to that level of anxiety increasing that we could change? For example, I was talking with one of my staff, one of my care managers, and she mentioned one of our clients was having some issues with anxiety, and sometimes one person in particular seemed to be setting her off. And so we sat down and kind of went through what was happening, and the caregiver was asking her a lot of open-ended questions where bigger responses were necessary. And this individual has dementia. And I believe it was frustrating her to have to remember how to respond to her larger questions. So, in supporting the individual to reduce her anxiety, let's communicate a little bit differently. Is there a way to talk with the client, the senior, in a way that is more of a yes or no, or just one or two responses? Do you want vanilla or chocolate ice cream? And see if that helps to reduce her agitation, because she's just not familiar with how to respond any longer with something that might be more complicated. So I hope that is helpful. We'll see. And please feel free to send those questions out to info@About Senior Solutions, and Steve will be back to answer your questions for you. In the meantime, we have some fabulous programming and really wonderful one-to-one sessions that we're able to offer through our life enhancement programming. We're able to do care planning and advocacy through our care management. Let me share a little video that we put together. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for viewing. Please send your questions, your comments, the things that you want to learn more about. We can have those discussions. If you'd like to be a guest on our program as a caregiver or a senior who has something that they would like to share, we would love to have you on. So please reach out to info@AboutSeniorSolutions.com, and we will get you scheduled in. So thank you so much, and you have a fantastic weekend.